There is a moment that comes after every sincere prayer, a moment most people never talk about, because it does not feel like an answer. It feels like silence. It feels like waiting in a room where the light has gone dim and nothing seems to be moving, though everything is. What if the delay itself is the answer being built, quietly, in a place you cannot yet see? Most people never realize that when a prayer is truly heard, the first thing that changes is not the circumstance. The first thing that changes is the woman herself. And that change rarely arrives gently. It arrives as a test. There comes a moment in every woman's life when she stops asking for things and starts asking for transformation. Even if she does not use that word, she prays for a marriage to heal, and what she receives is the strength to know her own worth. She prays for a door to open, and what she receives is the discipline to become someone capable of walking through it. She prays for peace, and what arrives first is the storm that clears the ground, where peace will eventually stand. This is not cruelty, this is construction, and construction is loud before it is beautiful. You don't notice it until you look back, months or years later, and realize that the very things you once called obstacles were actually the architecture of your becoming. The friend who betrayed you was not punishment, she was a mirror. The love that ended was not failure, it was a filtering. The silence from heaven was not abandonment, it was refinement. But you cannot see any of this while you are inside it. Inside it, all you feel is the weight. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from praying sincerely and watching nothing visibly move. It is different from ordinary tiredness. It is the exhaustion of holding a question open for far longer than feels bearable, of continuing to hope in a direction that offers no proof it is the right one. Many women reach this point and quietly begin to wonder whether the process itself is broken, whether they have done something wrong, whether their sincerity was simply not enough. But sincerity was never the missing ingredient. What was missing was an understanding of how transformation actually works, which is rarely in a straight line and almost never on the timeline the heart requests. Think for a moment about how differently we treat physical growth compared to inner growth. No one expects a wound to heal in a single day, and no one grows angry at a broken bone for taking weeks to knit back together. We understand, instinctively, that the body needs time to rebuild what was damaged, and we do not interpret that time as evidence of neglect. Yet when it comes to the heart, the mind, the soul, patience becomes far harder to extend. We want proof immediately. We want the answer to arrive with the same speed as the question was asked. But a woman's inner architecture is not rebuilt in a day any more than a bone is, and the same patience she would offer her body without hesitation is the patience she must learn to offer her becoming. This is why the tests exist, not as punishment and not as proof of unworthiness, but as the natural mechanics of transformation itself. A woman does not simply receive a better life the way a package arrives at a door. She grows into a life capable of holding what she asked for, and growing into something new almost always requires releasing an old shape first. This is uncomfortable by design. It is meant to be uncomfortable, the way a plant meant for open sky feels the strain of outgrowing the small pot it was once contained in. The discomfort is not a sign that something has gone wrong. It is often the clearest sign that something is finally, quietly, going right. So let us walk through this together, slowly, the way truth prefers to be understood rather than announced. There are 5 tests that tend to appear in the life of a woman whose prayer has truly been heard, not because a divine hand is punishing her, but because a divine process is preparing her. And each of these tests, when misunderstood, breaks people. When understood, it builds them into something the earlier version of themselves would not recognize. The first test is the test of silence. It is perhaps the cruelest one to endure, and yet it is the most necessary. When someone prays, they expect a reply, the way we expect an answer when we speak to another human being. But the deepest kind of answer often comes disguised as nothing happening at all. Consider a woman who prays for clarity about a relationship that has been slowly draining her. She wants a sign, a clear voice, something undeniable. Instead, days pass, weeks pass. Nothing changes on the surface. The relationship continues in its familiar rhythm of small disappointments and quiet resentments. She begins to wonder if she is praying into an empty sky. But silence is not absence. Silence is often the sound of something being tested, the way a smith checks the strength of metal, not by speaking to it, but by striking it and listening to how it rings. During her silent season, this woman does not receive a vision. What she receives is time. Time to notice the pattern she has been avoiding. Time to feel, without distraction, how it truly feels to be unseen in that relationship. Time to sit with a question she had been too busy to ask herself. Does this make me smaller or larger? The silence does not answer the prayer. The silence reveals the prayer's true shape, the one hidden beneath the surface request. This is the strange mechanism of the first test. What looks like abandonment is often incubation. A seed underground receives no sunlight, no praise, no visible progress. And yet, this is precisely the season in which its roots are formed. The roots that will later determine whether it can survive a storm above ground. A woman who cannot tolerate silence will often rush toward the first available noise, a rebound conversation, a hasty decision, a distraction disguised as an answer. And in rushing, she forfeits the very transformation the silence was trying to give her. The first test, then, is not about waiting for God to speak. It is about learning to hear herself in the absence of external noise. Because the voice she eventually needs to trust is not one that arrives from outside. It is one that has been quietly forming inside her all along. Silence teaches something else too, something less obvious but equally important. It teaches the difference between waiting passively and waiting actively. Passive waiting looks like standing still, arms folded, refusing to move until the world hands over an answer. Active waiting looks entirely different from the outside, though it may involve the exact same external circumstances. A woman waiting actively continues to build her life, continues to develop her skills, continues to nurture her friendships and her own mind, even while the specific thing she has prayed for remains unresolved. She does not put her life on hold as a kind of bargaining chip, as though refusing to live fully might somehow speed up the answer. She lives fully anyway, and in doing so, she often becomes exactly the kind of person capable of receiving what she asked for, right around the time it finally arrives. There is a version of this test that plays out in something as ordinary as checking a phone. A woman waits for a message that does not come, refreshes a conversation that has gone quiet, and interprets the absence of a reply as a verdict on her worth. But silence from another person is rarely the full story it appears to be in the moment. It is filtered through her own fear, her own history of being left, her own old belief that unanswered means unwanted. The test of silence, then, is not only about waiting on something larger than herself. It is about noticing how quickly ordinary silence gets translated into catastrophe by a mind that has not yet learned to sit calmly inside uncertainty. Learning to tolerate not knowing, without immediately filling that gap with the worst possible story, is itself one of the quiet forms of strength this first test is trying to teach. Once silence has done its slow work, the second test tends to appear, and this one is sharper. It is the test of surrender, and it rarely looks like peace. It looks like loss. There is a particular kind of grief that visits a woman right before a genuine breakthrough, though she rarely recognizes it as preparation while she is living through it. She prays for a better version of her life, and shortly after, something she was clinging to begins to fall away. A friendship that no longer fits, a job that once felt secure, a version of herself she built to survive a different chapter. It feels like punishment, arriving right when she thought things were finally turning around. But surrender is not the removal of good things. Surrender is the removal of the things that were never truly hers to keep. Things she mistook for foundation when they were only scaffolding. Picture a woman who spent years defining herself through being needed. She was the one who fixed things, who held her family together through sheer will, who never let anyone see her struggle. She prayed for rest, for someone to finally take care of her the way she had taken care of everyone else. And what she received instead was a season in which the people she had been holding up quietly stepped back, forcing her, for the first time, to face herself without an audience to perform strength for. It felt like isolation. It was actually invitation, an invitation to discover who she was when she was not needed, when no one was watching, when the only person left to answer to was herself. This is the cruelty and the mercy of the second test happening at once. What is being surrendered is rarely the thing itself. What is being surrendered is the identity built around the thing. A woman who has spent her life being defined by a relationship must sometimes lose the relationship to discover that she was never actually the role she played inside it. A woman who has spent her life being defined by approval must sometimes lose the approval to discover that her worth was never actually up for a vote. The ache of this test is real, and it should never be minimized or rushed past with a hollow phrase about everything happening for a reason. But underneath the ache is a redirection, a slow turning of the compass away from what she was praying to keep and toward who she is praying to become. There is an old truth, rarely spoken aloud, that most people do not lose their footing when life falls apart. They lose their footing when life is rebuilding beneath them, because rebuilding requires temporary emptiness, an in-between state with no name, no comfort, and no guarantee. This is where many give up, right at the threshold, mistaking the demolition for the final verdict rather than the necessary first stage of renovation. The second test asks a single, quiet question, over and over, in 1,000 different situations. Can you release what is not yours to keep, even when it hurts to open your hands? Those who can, move forward lighter. Those who cannot, spend years gripping something that was already gone, wondering why their prayers feel unanswered, when the truth is that the answer already arrived, disguised as an ending they refuse to accept. There is also a kind of grief that has no funeral, no ritual to mark it, and this is often the hardest grief a woman carries through the second test. No one sends condolences when a friendship quietly fades, or when a version of herself she once relied on no longer fits who she has become. These losses happen in silence, unacknowledged by anyone but her, and because there is no ceremony for them, she is often expected to move on as though nothing happened at all. But an ungrieved loss does not disappear simply because it goes unnamed. It waits, quietly, until she gives it the space to be felt. Part of surrendering well is allowing herself to mourn what has ended, without rushing to look, composed for an audience that was never actually watching as closely as she feared. After silence has revealed her, and surrender has emptied her, the third test arrives, and this one tests her relationship with her own reflection. This is the test of self-worth, and it is often the most disguised of all 5, because it rarely announces itself directly. It hides inside comparison. It hides inside the ache of watching someone else's prayer seemingly answered while yours remains quiet. It hides inside the question that visits late at night. What is wrong with me? Consider a woman scrolling through images of other people's joy, other people's weddings, other people's promotions, other people's apparent ease, while her own life feels suspended in a waiting room with no clock on the wall. The comparison is not really about the other person's life. It is a mirror held up to an old wound, a story she has carried since childhood or adolescence that whispers she is somehow behind, somehow lacking, somehow less deserving of good things arriving on time. The test here is not whether good things come to her. The test is whether she can hold her own value steady while she waits, without letting someone else's timeline become the measuring stick for her worth. This is where the deepest psychological trap lives, the belief that being loved, chosen, or blessed is proof of worth, and being unchosen is proof of its absence. But worth was never meant to be proven through outcomes. A woman who only feels valuable when she is chosen will spend her entire life auditioning for approval, bending her personality, her boundaries, and her needs into whatever shape seems most likely to be accepted. And ironically, this constant shape-shifting is often the very thing that keeps genuine connection at a distance, because what is loved in those moments is the performance, not the person underneath it. The third test asks her to build worth on a foundation that has nothing to do with external call response. Not because external things do not matter, but because a self that requires constant external validation will always be fragile, vulnerable to the next disappointment, the next rejection, the next silence. A woman who passes this test learns to source her sense of value from her own integrity, her own growth, her own quiet consistency, rather than from whether someone else noticed, chose, or applauded her. This does not mean she stops desiring connection. It means connection stops being the thing she depends on to feel real. There is a particular kind of strength that develops in a woman who has learned to sit with herself in a room with no applause, no witnesses, no proof that she matters, and still feel, deep in her bones, that she does. This strength cannot be faked, and it cannot be rushed. It is built one honest evening at a time, one moment of choosing self-respect over desperate reassurance, one instance of walking away from something that dimmed her rather than staying to be seen at any cost. This is what the third test is quietly building, beneath the discomfort of comparison and the bitter sting of watching others seem to receive what she is still waiting for. There is also something to be said about the particular loneliness of the third test, a loneliness that has nothing to do with being physically alone. A woman can be surrounded by people, invited everywhere, constantly in demand, and still feel a quiet ache of not being truly known, not being valued for who she actually is, beneath the version of herself she presents to keep the peace. This kind of loneliness is often harder to name than the loneliness of solitude, precisely because it hides behind a full calendar. Part of what this test asks of her is the courage to let herself be seen more honestly, even at the risk of being misunderstood, because a worth that depends on constant performance for an audience is not truly worth at all. It is only borrowed applause, and borrowed things must eventually be returned. It helps, too, to notice how worth often gets confused with usefulness. A woman raised to believe her value depends on what she provides for others, whether that is comfort, competence, or constant availability, will often mistake being needed for being loved. These are not the same thing, though they can look nearly identical from the outside. Being needed can vanish the moment she stops performing a function. Being loved does not depend on function at all. Part of the third test is learning to notice which one she has actually been receiving in her part. Closest relationships, and having the courage to want the kind that does not require her constant usefulness to remain intact. Once a woman has faced silence, surrendered what was never hers, and rebuilt her worth on steadier ground, she meets the fourth test, and this one is subtle because it disguises itself as wisdom. It is the test of discernment, and it asks her to tell the difference between a closed door and a front door she is simply afraid to knock on. This test often shows up wearing the mask of caution. A woman who has been hurt before learns to read warning signs, and this is valuable, a hard-earned form of intelligence that should never be dismissed. But sometimes that same caution, left unexamined, hardens into a wall that keeps out not only danger, but also genuine goodness, simply because goodness now feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar feels unsafe. She prays for a healthy relationship, and when a steady, calm, undramatic person finally appears, some part of her feels suspicious, rather than grateful, because her nervous system was calibrated by chaos, and now mistakes peace for boredom. There was once a woman who spent years praying for someone who would treat her gently. When that person eventually arrived, she found herself picking arguments out of nowhere, testing him in ways she did not fully understand, half hoping he would fail so she could return to the familiar terrain of being let down, because being let down at least felt like something she knew how to survive. This is the strange trap hidden inside the fourth test. Sometimes the very thing we prayed for arrives and we sabotage it, not because we do not want it, but because some unhealed part of us does not yet believe we deserve to keep it. Discernment, then, is not simply about detecting danger. It is also about detecting safety and learning to trust it rather than dismantle it out of old habit. This requires a kind of inner honesty that most people avoid, because it means admitting that some of the disappointment in her life was not caused by other people failing her, but by her own unhealed patterns repeating themselves in new disguises. This is a hard truth, and it must be handled gently, without becoming another way to blame herself for what was genuinely done to her by others. The fourth test is not about self-blame. It is about self-awareness, the willingness to look honestly at which doors she has been closing herself, and which doors were truly never meant to open. Both are real. The wisdom lies in telling them apart. Discernment also has a physical dimension that is easy to overlook when the mind is busy, analyzing words and intentions. The body often knows before the mind is willing to admit what it knows. A tightness in the chest around a certain person, a subtle exhaustion after certain conversations, a strange relief when someone cancels plans. These are not random reactions. They are information gathered quietly over time, long before the conscious mind has assembled enough evidence to justify a decision. Learning to trust this quieter language, rather than override it in favor of what looks good on paper or what others approve of, is part of what makes discernment feel less like a skill and more like an instinct that has simply been given permission to speak. There is a quieter form this test takes as well, one that has nothing to do with romantic relationships. It shows up in opportunities, in friendships, in the small decisions that shape a life. A woman prays for a fresh start, and when the opportunity finally appears, it looks smaller than she imagined, less impressive, less dramatic. Discernment asks her not to dismiss it simply because it failed to announce itself with fanfare. Some of the most significant turning points in a woman's life arrive looking almost unremarkable. A conversation that seemed minor at the time, a small decision that quietly redirected everything that followed. The fourth test refines her ability to recognize significance without needing it to be loud. And finally, after silence, surrender, self-worth, and discernment, comes the fifth test, the quietest and in some ways the most important, because it determines whether everything before it was wasted or fulfilled. This is the test of gratitude in advance, the ability to trust the process even while still standing in the middle of it, unfinished, unresolved, uncertain of the ending. It is easy to feel grateful once the answer has arrived, once the relationship has healed, once the door has opened, once the waiting has ended. That gratitude requires no faith at all, because by then there is nothing left to trust. The proof is already standing in front of her. The fifth test asks for something far more difficult: gratitude before the proof arrives. Gratitude in the middle of the waiting. Gratitude that does not depend on the outcome finally matching the request. Gratitude in advance is not the same as denial, and it is worth being precise about that distinction, because the two are often confused. Denial says, there is no problem here, everything is already fine, when clearly it is not. Gratitude in advance says something quite different. It says, there is a real problem here, and I still choose to trust that something good is forming underneath it. The first requires a woman to lie to herself. The second requires her to hold an honest view of her present circumstances while still extending faith toward what she cannot yet see. This distinction matters because a spirituality built on denial eventually collapses under the weight of ignored pain, while a spirituality built on honest gratitude grows sturdier with every hardship it is asked to hold. There was a woman who prayed for years for a certain kind of peace in her family, and it never fully arrived the way she pictured it. But somewhere in the waiting, she noticed something unexpected. She had become calmer. She had become less reactive, less desperate for others to change in order for her to feel okay. The family situation was still imperfect, but she was no longer imprisoned by it the way she once had been. Her prayer was answered, just not in the form she had originally requested. It was answered inside her, before it was ever answered outside her. And this is the secret hidden at the center of the fifth test. Sometimes the transformation is the answer. Sometimes becoming someone who can hold difficulty with grace is the very miracle that was being asked for, even if the external circumstance takes its own time or never changes at all in the way she once hoped. Gratitude in advance does not mean pretending everything is fine when it is not. It does not mean suppressing grief or forcing a smile over real pain. It means holding two truths at once. This hurts, and I trust the process anyway. It means saying, I do not yet see the full shape of what is being built, and I choose to keep showing up with an open heart rather than a closed fist. This is not passivity. It is one of the most active, disciplined forms of faith there is, because it requires strength, precisely in the moments when evidence is absent and doubt is loud. There is a small, private practice that many women who pass through this final test describe, though rarely in these exact words. It is the practice of noticing what has already changed, rather than only measuring what has not yet arrived. A woman might not yet have the relationship she prayed for, but she may notice she no longer settles for less than she deserves in conversation with a stranger who once would have swept her off her feet with very little effort. She might not yet have the career breakthrough she hoped for, but she may notice she no longer shrinks herself in rooms full of people more confident than her. These small shifts are easy to overlook because they lack the drama of a finished answer, yet they are often the clearest evidence that the prayer is already being answered, quietly, from the inside out. It is worth pausing here to notice something that rarely gets said plainly. These 5 tests do not arrive neatly, one after another, like chapters in a book with clear beginnings and endings. They overlap, they circle back. A woman may believe she has already passed through the test of silence, only to find herself years later standing in another quiet season, wondering why the same lesson has returned. This is not failure, and it is not a sign that the earlier growth was wasted. Life does not spiral in a straight line upward. It spirals like a staircase, returning to familiar positions but at a higher vantage point each time. The silence at 30 does not feel the same as the silence at 20, because she is not the same woman meeting it. What once terrified her now simply asks for patience. This is what growth actually looks like from the inside. Not a permanent graduation from difficulty, but a gradual widening of her capacity to hold it without breaking. Consider too how differently these tests can appear depending on the shape of a woman's life. For one woman, the test of surrender might mean releasing a relationship that no longer serves her becoming. For another, it might mean releasing a dream she has outgrown, a career path chosen at 22 that no longer fits the person she has become at 35. For another still, it might mean releasing an image of herself as someone who never needs help, learning instead to receive support without feeling diminished by it. The test does not care what form the letting go takes. It only cares whether she can do it with open hands rather than clenched ones. This is why comparing one woman's journey to another's so often leads nowhere useful. The tests are universal in structure, but entirely personal in content, tailored, it seems, to whatever a particular woman most needs to release, confront, or rebuild. There is also a quieter danger worth naming, one that hides inside spiritual language itself. Sometimes a woman uses the idea of being tested as a way to avoid taking responsibility for choices that are within her control. Not every hardship is a divine test. Some hardship is simply the natural consequence of a decision that needs to be corrected, not endured. Wisdom lies in knowing the difference, in asking honestly whether a difficulty is refining her, or whether it is a signal she has been ignoring, one that keeps repeating itself precisely because she has not yet acted on it. A test asks for patience and inner change. A warning asks for a decision and outer change. Mistaking one for the other can keep a woman waiting nobly inside a situation she was actually meant to walk away from long ago. It also helps to remember that none of these tests are meant to be walked through in isolation, as though solitude itself were the proof of strength. There is a difference between the healthy solitude that allows self-discovery and an isolation that quietly convinces a woman she must carry everything alone. Seeking guidance, leaning on trusted friends, speaking honestly with someone who has walked a similar road, none of this weakens the process. If anything, it is often through the reflection of another steady, caring presence that a woman can see her own progress most clearly, because growth is notoriously difficult to measure from the inside while it is happening. The tests refine her, but community often reveals to her just how far she has already come, at moments when she herself cannot see it. And perhaps the most overlooked truth in all of this is that the tests never really end, not because life is cruel, but because becoming is not a destination with a final gate. Even the woman who has walked fully through silence, surrender, self-worth, discernment, and gratitude will meet new versions of these same tests in new seasons, at new depths, asking new questions of her. This is not exhausting news. It is, in its own way, freeing. It means she never has to fear running out of room to grow, and it means every difficult season still ahead of her is not evidence that she has failed to learn, but confirmation that life still trusts her with more. Like, share, and subscribe if you didn't yet. Thanks for watching.